What is up, everyone? Welcome to OSO Demo Day. Lots of cool stuff. OSO chat is close to being live, so I think I'm going to demo that first, if that's cool with you guys. Cool. So maybe, okay, I'll just jump to the meat first, just to see the fun part, and then I'll show you how it's all built. So I'm going to log in. I have unfeature flagged everything, by the way. I don't know if you guys noticed, but if you're not in CarevaLabs.co, you actually do have access to all of this already.
Oh,
just like cause us to have a little bit more urgency towards getting polish out than we expect.
okay.
We never really expected people to be using our application that much. We always kind of steered people to Docs, steered people to PyOSO, and so we don't really have that many people coming in here except to create API keys. But they'll start seeing some interesting stuff. So now I've hidden everything until you've chosen an organization. Let's go to the OSO organization. This is us. Now you can create a new chat. So if you click on create chat.
What agent does this use? Is this the function agent right now?
I don't know, whatever's default.
Yeah, okay.
I don't have a selector yet. Right.
Okay.
Okay, so you'll see that there's a couple of weird rendering things that I still need to sort out. It took like 10 seconds for this left side pop up. Ignore that for a second. These are the types of things that I want to start working through with Javi. But yeah, we'll get back. We'll fix it. These are just minor bugs for now. So now, this is all built in Plasmic right now. It's just chatting with the default agent. There's no agent selector, but there's also chat history. So you'll see this is the chat that I just created, and I can go to a chat that I created last night. Okay, the classic question that people ask.
Yeah.
Optimism collection. It bugged out and failed for some reason last night. So
no.
Anyway, so now you can go back and you can see that there are also a whole set of histories. And I can come back to this one and hopefully it saved. Yes, it did save. So now these are all stored in the workspace. So if I'm part of the OSO team, anybody on the OSO team should be able to see any of the chats. Coming very soon, hopefully today, is like the ability to rename these. So it's not just dates of like when you created it. All of that is stored in the schema already. I just haven't wired up the UX to actually do it. And if I don't like something, I can delete it with no safety rails right now. Also on the to-do list is to add like a, are you sure? But you know, eventually, yeah, I'll set up a modal to do all of that stuff as well. So anyway, that's OSO chat. Okay, so how did we do this? Let me share a couple of things that are new. This is more of an FYI for Javi because I know that this was something that you struggled with a little bit. I created something called an OSO chat provider. That OSO chat provider is a Plasmic component. It pulls in use chat, which is really the crux of like all the functionality. I can take in two props. One is like the agent name, which obviously is not plumbed in together yet, and the chat ID. The reason why I care about a chat ID is because under the hood, this component will save my chat history as I type into it. So you'll see here, this is like where on first load, I pull in the chat messages from Supabase. On subsequent chats, I save. This probably could be optimized or memoized, but anyway, I was rushing to get this demo together last night. But that's pretty much it. It was like 100 lines of code, and this is how you import use React. Basically, use chat. Use chat is, where am I? Am I going crazy? Use chat is here. Use chat is here, and it has chat data. And I literally just passed the whole thing into Plasmic, and then I'll show you how to use it. So on the Plasmic side, if I go to the chat page, you'll see that the chat page takes in a path parameter. chat ID. This is just the test chat ID. And then if I come into here, the OSO chat provider, I pass in my chat ID from the props. And then I also render some test data right now just to be able to do some styling. But the purpose of having test data and the chat provider here is that all I would really need to do, okay, so there's reads and then there's writes, right? So for reads, if I go into this vertical stack, you'll see that there's this thing in the OSO chat provider called context.oso chat, and then I can get the messages. Right now they're reverse chronological order. I pass all of those messages in. It's called current item, and then I can style each item, which right now is literally just a text box. So, you know, right now I show the role as like a little text box right above the box, and then this box is like a white background thing where I pass in the current item.content. That's it. So that's all it took to wire this up. We can have a designer kind of play around with the styling because it is ugly still, but that's okay. And then, you know, you were wondering, okay, what do I do with all those functions? Well, remember, Plasmic is just React under the hood. So if I have this text box, you can pass in interactions, right? So on change, I want it to run OSO chat.handle input change with the event. And on submit or on enter, I want it to call handle submit with the event. And then I also clear the value of the input whenever I hit enter. So that's pretty much it. That's all it took to wire it up on the front end. And then there's a few more things around like showing the chats, which probably are less important, but I'm just going to show you really quick. Hopefully this takes less than a minute. So for something like the new chat is just a button, and then the button has a couple of actions right now. One is it calls create chat with my org ID. And then this is really hacky. I don't like this. But you can get the result of create chat in this $ steps, and then from the result I can redirect, right? We're gonna need to fix this. This is like super ugly.
You can. Oh, never mind. I was going to say how to improve it, but I can say it later.
Yeah, I did try. There is a drop-down item called go to page, and it wasn't working. So that might be a bug that I need to report to you, Ikro.
Oh, I was going to say to use that.
It didn't work for some reason. Anyway, that's it. That's pretty much it. Okay, so that is the chat history. And then the last thing I was going to demo was around how CI has changed. This took like half a day, which was a lot longer than I was expecting, but I'm glad it's over now, and it's still not working correctly. So I just want to like tell people how it works and tell people how I know it is and isn't working. So CI default has been changed to remove all of the like refresh test credentials, all of the public variable loading with like the Docker container hack. In fact, can we stop publishing that Docker container now?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know.
Anyway, whatever. Not important. It is set up to currently run on pull request target, which in theory could be a security vulnerability. But number one thing is today, CI default doesn't actually have any secrets. Like there are no secrets. You'll notice everything in here is either a hard-coded test value just to make sure the build works, which it typically does because I don't actually need to query these things at build time, or it's kind of like obfuscated in an environment variable right now. But again, none of these things, the reason why I put them in environment variables is so that they're easier to change, not because they're inherently secrets. So these URLs are not secrets, and the Plasmic API token is a read-only token, so it's also not necessarily a secret per se. TLDR, don't put anything in CI default that isn't a secret if there's any way to avoid it. If we do need to add secrets in the future, we're going to have to, I don't know, we'll have to have a chat. You raise your hand, Ikro?
Oh, just saying that your screen is only showing Plasmic.
Oh, sorry. That was dumb. Share this tab instead. Thank you. Yeah, so you'll see that everything in here is just a hard-coded test value. And then there's a handful of things that I left in environment variables just to make it easy to change in case we need to change the URLs. But none of these are secrets. So if in the future there's things that are sensitive, like the reason why pull request target is dangerous is because what we want to get to a world is one where outside contributors who are not in our organization can start to file pull requests, and we can run CI against those pull requests. But the traditional security problem that arises is if you let people do that, they can run malicious code with your secrets and then steal your secrets. So right now, yeah, the key is to not put secrets in here. And then we still have an authorization step, which we can refine until we feel comfortable putting secrets in here. So the authorization step is here. You'll see that nothing runs. Build lint test does not run until authorized gets run. If we are internal collaborators, this should just be a pass-through, so you don't actually need to authorize anything. Hopefully for people here on this call, it hasn't affected you in any way. The authorize is just a pass-through. But if you're from an external fork, it should require explicit authorization. Now there is, Ken, I noticed that your PRs are requiring authorization. So the reason why it requires authorization is because you're doing pull requests from your fork. So this is actually a great demo. I'm going to show you how this works right now. If you're part of the org, you've probably seen the way that we tell whether or not it's internal or external is whether or not the pull request is coming from a fork or if it's coming from us internally. This is coming from a fork, right? You can, I think, yeah, this is coming from Ken. So because it's coming from a fork, it's treated as external, and because it's treated as external, it doesn't run the code because it could be potentially unsafe. So what do? As a reviewer, anybody on the dev team should be able to come in here, look at the files changed, make sure there's nothing in here that's like malicious malware, which would be bad. Oh, hey, Ken.
Sorry, not on the screen you are showing.
Oh my God, I keep doing this. I'm sorry, guys. I swear I know how to use computers. Okay, so yeah, because Ken's pull request is coming from a fork here, if you're an approver, you should first come in and actually review the code. The main things to look for would be like if there's any malicious malware or kind of secret exfiltration or things like that. You want to look at the code and see if it makes sense, if it's something that you feel comfortable running, because you're going to be running against our environment. Then you can come back to conversation, and when you see, I think all of us are on a mailing list where we get these authorization requests. This is what's causing it. So anytime he pushes to this branch into this pull request now, like GitHub is asking us to approve the CI run. That's this authorized step. So you can click on this authorized step, and it'll say waiting for review pending deployments. Now it's saying, am I allowed to run against this public environment? I click that, I approve and deploy, and that should unblock his CI to start running. And merges aren't allowed until CI can run. So for external like forks, this is going to be a little bit more process, but it's for security purposes. Let me pause there, see if anybody has any questions.
I have one question. When we authorized an external user to run CI, will they have access to logs or from the CI run, or is it blocked just for us?
I think our logs in general are public. So if it's a public pipeline, so I think all of that is available. But yeah, I guess we should try with a different user. So yeah, I mean, long story short, don't put any secrets inside the logs. But
yeah. So this is me logged out. Logged out, if I click on one of these, like here's Ruben's run. Huh.
oh, it only has the top level stuff. Oh,
Top right. If you go to the top right, there's like show raw logs usually.
sign in to view logs. Yeah.
Okay. So if I'm signed in, I should be able to see the logs. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Good question. Don't log secrets.
Don't log secrets. Yeah. The GitHub actions do their best to try and obfuscate any secrets that we may have that it knows about, but obviously, yeah, there's that itself also presents danger, I guess, in some ways, right? So, yeah.
But yeah, great question. Any other questions about chat history or CI?
So I also have the right to approve my fork PR, right?
So Ken, I think Carl actually added you as a direct collaborator. So in the future, if you want to avoid this, as part of the team, you should be able to just submit pull requests directly from the main OSO repo. So you don't have to keep asking for authorization. But yes, if you are in your own fork, then you will have to ask for authorization to run the CI.
Okay.
Great. All right, I'll hand it off to Ruben. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah, so I will also share my screen. Let's just do the whole thing, the whole shebang. All right. Awesome. So so for this sprint there was a kind of a mix of bug fixing as usual, but I think we're finally getting to a place where I think we can really start iterating on this agent very, nicely. So there are a couple of ways to sort of interact with this thing. I guess we can just, start with the simplest. The easiest is probably our Discord. And using, so don't use bang ask. Apparently that doesn't work, and I don't know why. I will figure that out. But I just asked it, how many projects are in this optimism collection? And it returned the right answer. Why I returned it twice? I'm thinking someone else might be running this locally and be using the, they might actually have the Discord credentials. I know that I was running that, so if someone else is running this locally, your thing is listening to me. Yeah. So, but yeah, I don't know. Let's ask a different question. How many projects were in? Oof, this is going to be an interesting one. I don't know. I don't know which bot responded with this, but I think this might be happening randomly. So let's give that a second. But we can go over kind of the other changes that kind of went into this. So one of the things that we've been able to do is and unfortunately, the evals had not been working as well as they are now, but now they are actually producing some useful results. But we can actually take a look at how these things are performing. So oh my god, Phoenix. Give me a second. Oh, nope. Yes. Right.
Yeah, good question. So you moved it over to the text to SQL public channel. Does that mean people can run evals from there?
Oh. I forgot that this is a public channel. Yeah, I guess it's our thing to actually I didn't move it there. So that just means that it's also listening there.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So that's a bug. Great. We got a bug. Hold on. Oh wow. Did this just change how everything works here? Oh, it certainly did. Okay. Phoenix. Amazing. Okay. So, yeah, as you can see here, we got this nifty, I'm gonna make this smaller so I can see things. So I ran this morning, this text to SQL experiment. We can take a look at, kind of what these yeah, you can actually see like how the results are being mapped now. Some of these have been significantly improved. Some of them, at least on the remote, we're getting a little bit of bugs, and I would like to double check on some of this. But yeah, thanks to Evan to improving, our comparisons here. Like we can check, the SQL query similarity based on like, dissecting the query. We use some SQL glot magic to make that a little bit nicer. Let's see here. Let's see. So these are like the input, right? So the text that we'd like to turn into SQL. And then this is the reference, but I don't know why it doesn't show the reference. Like I really wish that it gave the full rendering here, but it does not. So the classic question that I like to ask, because it can do it well, is how many projects are in the Optimism collection? And you can see here actually it produces a pretty nice result actually. And so yesterday I got 100% SQL query type similarity. Today I'm getting a 50%. I don't know why. I'll double check on that. Yeah, that might just be some sort of internal bug. But one thing we do need to know, like, yeah, actually the query that we wrote is a little bit more colloquial. Like this is a fully like qualified name here, projects by collection V1, but it's actually the correct query. This is maybe not the most interesting one to see, but many of these others actually have better context now because we added the RAG. And I can go over more about exactly how we did that. So
yeah, quick question. I'm curious what your thought process here is because this is how I had it originally, and then there was a point when I refactored it to actually just spit out the result. It's easier for me to look at the result than it is for me to understand whether the SQL is correct.
Yeah,
so it looks like you switched it back, and I'm curious, like, how do you see? Yeah, I'm curious, like, how am I supposed to look at the result?
Yeah, so I would like to look at the result as well. Some of this was mostly like partially like trying to get the SQL out of the Llama index stuff. At first it seemed hard, but now I realized that there's actually a way to do it based on the context of the workflow. So you just need to pass that in. And then we can just grab all of the events. So I will likely make that change. I think it should be fairly small. Because the one big change that I did, or the one change that I did make is instead of like calling the so if we take a look at this text to SQL experiment. So I actually pass in just the registry and then, some like raw options as just, just a plain dictionary. But I use the query engine tool here, mostly because previously when we were trying to do this, we were trying to do the SQL query similarity and whatnot. But we weren't actually able to get the query string itself from that result that we were in the way that we had designed it previously. So I actually wasn't able to do SQL query similarity like checks at all. It was only based on the result, and the result check for many of these, like that also wasn't that was not returning useful eval or useful eval like value. So that was the only reason I had done it that way. But I would like to, now that I realize that I can actually grab the history of events from a context in Llama Index, we can actually use that to get both the SQL query that it used and also the response that it gives. So that is a modification that I will make. But for now, I think, this was the right way to get us going, to at least be able to compare whether or not like the closeness to the actually referenced outcome.
Sorry, am I crazy here? Like the whether or not the SQL matches at all is like not important?
So yes and no, right? I think it's the result is the highest value thing that we can compare against, but our result eval was not working. I guess that was the biggest issue. And so and our result eval is still not working really, right? Like let's see here. So do I agree with you? Yes. But I also think that we need to also look at the SQL, right? Like that is being generated.
Well, like the way that it was before, I could look at the screen and I could tell you in less than a second
whether or not, yeah.
these are actually doing anything useful.
Yeah.
Right now, I can't tell if any of these are doing anything useful.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah, I can bring. So my intent is to bring that back. Like I said, the only reason I did it this way was because the evals, like the eval values, were actually not useful to me at all previously. So I couldn't even get an understanding of whether or not I was improving or, like based on the numeric value that I was getting back.
And maybe we just like the best answer is just to concatenate both, right?
Yes. Yeah. So well, no. That's what I'm saying is I realized that Llama Index allows me to grab the entire workflow and the events that happened on the entire workflow. So like each stage. So the SQL generation and then also the response generation. Right. So sort of the in between of like, okay, well now I have the SQL. Okay, well now that I have the SQL, I'm going to make the query. Right. Before we only had the final result when we were comparing in the eval, and like because the result similarity is like not a useful measure. I wasn't actually able to use it to understand anything. So at least now I can understand, like, are we getting closer to making the correct kind of SQL? And actually these evals is based on what Evan and I were looking at. Spider also uses pretty similar, like, is it making the correct query eval?
Like, like one of the most useful features that we could leverage here is if you click on the one experiment drop down here.
Like this one?
No,
this
top left.
Top left.
No,
one experiment. Sorry. Yes.
Now pick another one, like further down, like.
Oh God.
Christ.
Oh God. Cool. Hold on. Okay, just pick any one of the other ones.
No, I want to compare, right? Like so pick like two other ones.
Oh.
You can go into one and then, or you can do it that way.
Yeah.
Okay, you might want to pick another one where
yeah. Hold on. I'm going to pick these. Let's see.
Okay, this is a great example.
Yeah.
I just want to see side by side. If the left side is with rag and the right side is without rag, I want to see if I'm making a difference.
Yes.
Like the SQL here does not help me with that. I think.
No. I understand what you're saying. I will get that back.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah. No. Yeah. So the reason why I did it this way again is mostly because at the time when we were, like as I was running these evals, it was unclear to me whether or not it was like making like the actual eval of like value that I was getting, like all of these result similarities, these numbers ended up being useless. They ended up being useless. So I tried to get a way to get it to be somewhat useful. And I think that we've arrived there, but now that I've realized that there's a way to get both the full result and also the SQL comparison. So I think, so we'll get there. We'll get there. That was a mistake and a misunderstanding of like what was available.
I'm curious, like in your experience then with the RAG so far, like what types of queries is it performing better at?
So yeah, I think the RAG has helped with at least like being able to understand like some of the context of because the RAG gives results like in the tables, it's able to make either better optimizations for certain queries. Like the optimism one where it's, you know, like how many projects are in the optimism collection. Previously, this was doing some unnecessary joining. Which still resulted in the correct number. It was just unnecessary. And now, because of the RAG, it's actually been able to optimize that further. So like no joins, single query, you know, straight from the projects by collection, because it actually has enough context in there already. So it's actually like, it helps with those kinds of things. Yeah, for anything that has like maybe more general language, it provides more context for that. Like yeah, but whether like I'm still trying to figure out, you know, exact, like it's hard to compare directly at this point. It's mostly just vibes.
Well, it does seem like the stuff on the left is with.
Yeah, hold on. Whoop. Let's do this. Oh my God, this UI.
Like experiment 55 is with the RAG, right?
Yeah, experiment 55 is with the RAG. So let's see. Oh God.
You can tell the
I see. Because many of these are new experiments. Okay. Hold on. So we're gonna have to scroll down and see if there's anything. Here.
Yeah, so it looks like there's a lot more things that it will try to answer.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the past it would just say I can't.
Yeah, exactly.
So some of these have like a Trino prefix for some reason.
Yeah, so that's why, yeah, that's a bug I randomly only started seeing with Gemini. So I created so this thing that says Trino right here. It's actually when we do the eval, or when we do the query to actually check the results. That's filtered out, but yeah, the result is this still. It just spits that out. So, but I created some guards against that. It just seems that what it does, and the reason why it's doing it, I guess, is it generates like a markdown explanation of the SQL, and then we parse that basically, right? Well, instead of doing 3 backticks in SQL, it does 3 backticks in Trino, and Llama Index does not know how to deal with that. So
right.
Hence this issue. But yeah. Yeah, actually, here's an interesting improvement, right? Like, so you can see this one went from joining, now it does not because it has the RAG. Yeah.
Cool. I had another thing that came up in the chat history thing. I'm curious if you have a good answer for. Is if I'm in the web app and I ask our canonical question the first time, sometimes the answer is okay, sometimes it doesn't. But if it is the like the third or fourth message in the chat dialogue, then it starts to get confused, if that makes sense. And presumably that's like, okay, it's passing in the full chat history as context and not confusing it. I'm curious, like, do you have a sense of where where that can be fixed?
That is a great question. No, actually, yeah. I don't usually do a long chat history with you know, I do like a one-shot call, like, hey, query this, and then see what the answer is that I get, as opposed to like trying to refine like you know, with it in chat. So that is interesting. I don't know. But I have noticed on the chat sometimes, yeah, like it's non-deterministic, but sometimes it's like, I don't know how to answer that. And then you ask it again, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I have that value. So, yeah, I don't have a good answer there at the moment.
You had a comment, Evan?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so I've built like chatbots before with chat history. And there's some like techniques you can use to address that. Like some things that I've used in the past that have worked pretty well are like after a message, create a message, you like summarize it. And then you could even use like RAG to retrieve only messages that are relevant. And then even like naive, I'm not sure how you're representing it, but even naive things where you just put like, this is the chat history and you clearly label that it's like a chat history and stuff. I feel like I found that helps. But if it's getting confused, I imagine it's probably because it's not bringing enough context in. So like the chat history is overpowering the fresh context from the latest user query. And so I think it's just a matter of like framing things and then hopefully using the RAG too will like help address that. But yeah.
I wonder if we're feeding the history correctly into the.
Yeah, so it gets complicated because there's a few layers, right? Right now you're working on the tool, and you're just questioning the tool, and then we're wrapping it with a function agent right now. And the function agent we didn't write, but you can, if you read the function agent, it's actually not that much code. It's like 200, 300 lines of code. And so we also have a fork of it called the basic agent in the code base. If you ever take a look at that, like the naive thing to do would be take a basic agent and throw away the chat history and just have it be a really dumb wrapper around the tool.
Sure.
But in the future, like, yeah, I like your suggestions, Evan. I think like we really should be forking the function agent or React agent and be doing smarter things around how we represent history and then how we pass that into the context alongside with the tool. But yeah, obviously we haven't played with that very much yet. But yeah, those are great suggestions. I like it.
Cool. Yeah, just one more small thing on all of this. Yeah, so a lot of this is now hooked up. So the RAG is actually, so one of the things that we do with the RAG is I realize you don't actually want all the columns for all of the tables. Because providing project ID and things like that makes basically you'd run out of tokens. And actually, yesterday when I was running some tests, I was already running out of tokens in certain cases because some of the data here is just going to return something super large. So we may have to even figure some of that out. But try to give it as much context as possible. But actually, only chose these 4 right now. These 4 tables, so projects v1, collections v1, projects by collection, and metrics v1 or v0, and that seems to help already a bit. It does make me realize that like there was one question, the one about like full-time developers. It's not able to get any context on that because actually, even though that's like a proper metric name, I think we might be missing like pulling some of that data somehow. So, and getting that into metrics v0 correctly. So, yeah. So I don't know. Some of this is actually showing that we might have some like, small data bugs and stuff like that. So, yeah.
This kind of reminds me of an issue that I think we had from a while back. I have to check if it's still there, but just around like descriptions and how we think about either standardizing them or making them more useful in this context.
Yeah.
Like, one version of this is that projects submit their own descriptions. Another version is that we create a standard description. Another one that's human readable. Another one is that it's actually not very human readable and is useful for a SQL agent. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that field?
Yeah. So yeah, that's a really interesting one. I was thinking of trying to figure out, because I feel like the descriptions are actually probably what ends up running up these tokens, because even if you return a couple of fields, those descriptions are pretty large.
They can be unlimited. I think we don't impose a character limit.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have a character limit. Parquet keeps going. So I think I don't think it's a bad thing for people to write their own descriptions necessarily. I mean, but I do think that we need a way of like summarizing it and turning it into like a tag cloud of some, something that would be smaller set of useful information for the context here. because like as is, like, you know, at least the way that I've structured it is the way that, you know, like there was an example of llama index, you know, how they basically you take a row, right, and then you turn that into a string, and then what happens is, yeah, when a query comes in, using the query, you just you know, retrieve rows relevant, you know, from the vector database, right?
So, quick question. There's like, we kind of have two levels of descriptions. There's schema descriptions, right? You have at the SQL mesh layer, you have at the semantic layer, and then there's entity descriptions, which is what you're describing here. Like, the naive thing to do, which I think I've seen other people do before, is you just like substring like entity descriptions, especially if they're user generated. Is there any reason to believe that that wouldn't be good enough?
Yeah, I think that should be all right. Yeah.
Like usually the first couple sentences are really all you really want anyway. And then if they start getting into paragraphs, like those other paragraphs doesn't actually help the agent perform better, right?
Yeah,
usually.
yeah. So we basically do some, just substring the descriptions here so that we can provide more context in other places. Yeah. I don't think that's so bad. I mean, we could also do some other processing, like remove all the those, you know, and the ands, and right, like I can't imagine any of that's actually useful. So, like common English words. So, but I mean, I think pre-processing some of this data a bit more and putting it into the vector database is useful, or, you know, in terms of how we return these responses, to build the context. I think there's an opportunity even to use like some of this with, you know, like a multi-agent setup where maybe you would ask, you know, questions about these tables, about, you know, like where should we be finding relevant data, and then something else that's handling the context, you know, and storing the history of like, how am I building this query? So sorry, Evan, go ahead.
No, I just had a quick question. So you mentioned when using the RAG that you hit the token limit a lot. When like thinking about this intuitively, if I wanted to answer a natural language query about, like you said, finding full-time active developers in the Optimism collection or something, I'm struggling to understand like why there's so many things that are being brought in that like a token limit would be reached. Like I imagine like if it were to do that, right, we would bring in some of those, if they were in the metrics v0, the full-time developer metrics, and then maybe some rows from like the collections about Optimism, but that doesn't feel like it would be anywhere near hitting like that limit. How much are you actually like pulling in?
Yeah. So again, I think some of it might be around some of the settings that I have for the RAG. You know, like some of these columns maybe are unnecessary. I know that the descriptions can be kind of large, so sometimes the rows that get pulled in. So I believe I grabbed the top K, or like the 3 top K. You know.
Oh, really? Just the top 3, and it's still
Exactly. Which like kind of blows my mind. So, but I'm guessing that, you know, in those specific instances, it must have pulled in some things that were significantly large. So, and then for many of the like all of the tables that are not listed here, I basically just have an empty vector database, so it should return nothing for those, right? Because and the reason why it's done this way is because the query tool, the library we're using, just expects there to be a vector store for every table. But I think if I can change. Oh, actually, I'm getting the top 5.
Okay, we should look at like specifically what it's returning though, because I remember the paper, not from this week but last week. I wasn't there, but I was able to watch the video and read it. That was comparing RAG to long context LLMs. Like the new LLMs can bring in so much information and still retain so much. So I'm
Yeah.
really surprised that like even only bringing, I like theoretically you should be able to set the top K to like 20 or 30.
Yeah.
And it could be able to still bring everything in because we're just talking about like single rows.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. It's probably like some crazy edge case where the descriptions are like insanely long for a collection or a project. And then we probably have to look into like some summarization.
Yeah.
I really love the enthusiasm. I mean, I strongly encourage Evan to jump in there, and I'll also once you start playing with the traces, you're gonna love traces, and you're gonna get a better sense of what's getting pulled in. But yeah, I love that you are excited about this. I really want to see you help out more with this kind of stuff. Let's talk about this in the sprint. Would love Ikuro to demo connectors if that's cool.
Yeah, sorry for taking
Oh,
over.
good. I love the enthusiasm.
Yeah. So that is my time. Sorry. Yeah, we've gone. Yeah, this. I thought that this was going to be much quicker, but yeah. Go ahead, whoever's next, and I will stop sharing my screen.
Okay, I will share mine. So just before I begin, I want to say that we have these documented over. If you go to our docs and go under guides, there is how to connect also to Google Sheets. So yeah, I'm gonna show you how to connect your any sheets to our Trino instance, so you can query it via PyOSO. So first, you will need to create a service account in your Google Cloud project. It doesn't need to have any specific permission. You just need to create a service account and get the JSON key for it. I won't create one now because we already have this one, and I'll reuse it. So for example, I want to connect this table here to and query it via our infrastructure. So the first thing you need to do is create this metadata table that has some data here. That is, it needs the table name that will be shown on Trino. It needs the sheet ID and the sheet name. The sheet ID is on the URL, the spreadsheet, and the sheet name is the name of the tab here on the bottom. And owner, you can put anything, and there's also notes, which is the description of this table.
So you need to put this into a different sheet?
Yes, you need to create one specific sheet just for this.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Describes the schema or not the schema, but the list of tables for Trino. Yeah.
Yeah. Aha. and owner, like this owner.
Owner is it might be the user that it uses to create the tables. I'm not sure.
Was this something that we came up with? This sheet,
no,
or is
this is from the Trino docs.
Whoa, this is wild. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, it feels very raw, but it works.
Yeah. So I've already added the table here, and you can see the ID here is the exact ID from up here. Can you guys see my URL? I'm not sure.
Yep.
And after you need a hashtag and the name must match the tab on the bottom. After that, you can go over our connections tab in your organization, and then you're gonna add a new connector. Currently, we support Postgres and Sheets, so I'm gonna add a Sheets connector. I'm gonna test, and you need two information. One is the credentials key that from your service account, and it needs to be encrypted, base 64 encrypted. Let me copy that real quick.
This metadata sheet thing is still, oh my god.
And the And this is the metadata sheet ID, which is this.
This is so interesting.
Yeah. Plus hashtag and the name here, tables.
So you couldn't just like invite like let's say a Kariba user or something.
You also need to invite. So
Oh, oh my god, the user experience here is rough. Okay.
It's
Yeah.
rough. Once you're in, it's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
here
Okay.
then.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is not against you, Iko. Like, this is-
Yeah, the Trino thing, but my God,
oh man.
So you're gonna submit.
We should create an agent that can do all this stuff for you.
And then
Um,
here it is. We automatically add the organization name as a prefix. And then, as you mentioned, that I forgot, you need to share your sheets with the service account. The service account also has kind of an email here. So you need to share both the metadata and the tables that you want to for it to have access to.
here's a crazy idea, Ikaro. Like, what if we only had our service account, right?
Sorry?
And so we just have a well-known service account that you share things with. And then when you go in to create your connector, you've basically created a form for this metadata sheet, and you're just passing in the metadata of the sheet that you just shared with me, right? Is there an easy way from our perspective? Like, okay, the risk here is that we accidentally share everybody's private metadata, or sorry,
Yes.
everybody's private sheets with everybody else. But is there some way for us to be able to distinguish between who shared what with us, and then enforce that in OPA?
So no, like the OPA that we use is for Trino permissions, right? They like you would only be able to see other people's permissions, but the issue is someone could, for example, the only credentials that would exist would be this ID here, right? So
Yeah, but like that's only accessible to us, right?
yes, but if someone got this ID from you, they could access your tables from our Trino instance.
If they got access to which ID?
This ID from your sheets. If they got access to your sheet ID, they could connect.
Yeah, I think that's why it does require, like, that's why I don't know if OPA is the right mechanism, but I'm wondering, is there some mechanism where I can have more fine-grained access in the catalog, so I can say, okay, this sheet is only accessible to these users or something?
No, we already do this, but what I mean is, if where is it? So you're saying that we remove the credentials key. We always use the same credentials key, right? Which is our service account.
Yeah.
But then if anyone could create a connector for any sheet that we have access to.
No, I understand. You would have to have some way. Yeah. Anyway, we can take this offline, but it's worth it. Maybe the TLDR is that it's worth brainstorming if there is a better.
Yeah. I think I see where you're trying to go, Ray. Yeah, and I'm also thinking through that. Yeah. So,
Yeah, let's take it offline. But
yeah.
I'm glad it works. I'm very grateful you shipped this. I'm glad Carl unlocked. This is super cool, and I am excited to see if there's any way to improve the UX at all. But I think this is the right first step anyway, regardless of whether
I mean, given we'll have like 3 enterprise clients at this point, right? I think we just get on the call and literally handhold them through it.
So after the connections is created, you need to create an API key in your organization. So that's the only way you have access to the connector. And you can now, with your API key, if you go into PyOSO and query show catalogs, you should be able to see your new catalog. Let me change my my screen here.
Quick time check. Are we going to go past the half hour?
So
That might be the case. Yes.
it's just showing catalogs here.
Yes.
You'll see that it added a new show schemas from
Yeah, sorry, Carl. I know we still need to do you and Evan.
it's always in the default schema, and yeah, I think this is it for now. Just also before I finish, just a quick peek on Plasmic here. So on what I'm working on now. So you'll be here in your connections page, and then you click your connections, and you come to this screen, and then you will have something like this, where you can see all the table all the metadata and add stuff.
Awesome. This is great.
Yeah, that's it for me.
Cool. Let me jump in. Just quick time check. How much should we try and cap this in the next 10 minutes? I can go pretty fast.
Yeah, I'm okay with going over if you guys are okay with going over. But
Yeah.
If people have to drop, that's
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Should I just take the time or should I rush?
I think you shouldn't rush, but I don't think you should be leisurely. I think if you can be concise and to the point, I think we can make time for it. Yeah.
Always am. All right. I will jump in. I have 3 things to share. The first one is that we shipped the latest round of retrofunding metrics. I think the announcement's happening, maybe it already happened today, but we closed everything out on Monday, and this was the smoothest round. Every round has gotten smoother and smoother. This is now the 4th one that we have done. There are a few little issues on the integration side with OP Atlas, but apart from that, everything on our side worked perfect. One kind of continued issue that we have, and we're still doing some manual debugging, is that there's no way of ensuring that you don't have duplicate DeFi llama slugs. And they actually had a bug last month, which basically wouldn't let anybody proceed with the application unless they had a DeFi llama slug in their application. And so people were just putting in random slugs like Aave and Uniswap. And then when we ran the rewards, we were seeing projects with
Oh man.
$1 billion in TVL at the top of the list. So in any case, that was a fun little thing to fix. Right now, we're doing it basically once the data has already come through, we clean it up, but hopefully next month there'll be a fix on the Atlas side to prevent that from happening. But yeah, that was ugly. Going back to the results themselves, this is the main chart, which basically shows each month how much, which products are getting how much in terms of rewards. There are 2 rounds, the on-chain builders and the dev tooling. So you can see the cumulative total for projects, and then here you can kind of break down which ones are doing well in dev tooling, which ones are doing well in on-chain builders. There's a few that are in both categories, but for the most part, it's split between the 2. A few other updates. We also increased the cap for projects in the dev tooling round. So previously, things were capped at 5% of the pool. Now it's gone up to 6%. So that's why top dev tooling products like Hardhat and Open Zeppelin contracts are getting a bit more funding this month. And then on the on-chain builder side, we reduced things slightly. So previously the max was around 67, and now it's down to 65. So those are the main changes over here. In total, there are 450 projects that are receiving some reward or have received a reward through the program, which makes it also the largest retrofunding program they've had in terms of sheer number of projects that have received more than 0. That's cool. On the on-chain builder side, you can do a deep dive on more metrics. You can pull any of the different things you might care about and pull those up. We're also kind of tracking which new products are coming in. It's pretty cool to see some projects that literally launched a few months ago and are now doing very well in terms of funding. So here's an example of one that I'd never heard of before, but you can click the link and actually let me see if they ship the results here. So this is a new project. It's building on World Chain. It's called the World Republic. Okay, they haven't announced the results just yet, so we won't be able to see that. If we come back over here and look at another project like, I don't know, let's just look at Uniswap because everybody's heard of Uniswap. We can come in and you can see the total amount of funding they've received so far. This is only the first 3 months. It doesn't include May, so I guess they haven't announced yet. You can see the cumulative stats over here. And then here they are ingesting our time series metrics over the past 6 months or so, and you can basically see the drivers of their rewards calcs over here. The same is also possible for dev tooling projects. Let's look at opens up in contracts. Developers love this feature here. So basically being able to see who are the top projects that are using opens up in contracts in this case. There's also a list of all the developers. I would love to have a more kind of interesting way of displaying that data. So if you look over here, one of the things that that we expose is this graph, which basically shows here's all the projects that are using a particular project. This is like everything here, but we could be, specific. We could say, okay, what are the biggest Rust packages right now? And let's see which products are using those. I can reduce this as well. Give it a second. Hex is slow if you haven't cached things recently.
Don't worry, the LLM is also very slow.
Loading. Yeah, I've done a lot of optimization. So if you see over here, I'm using UV, for example, and I basically have some logic which tells it, which kind of looks at whether it needs to refresh or not. And if it doesn't refresh, it just pulls everything from a local cache. But even still, it's very slow. So let's see if that fixed it. Okay. Yeah, not very exciting right now. You basically just have 2 packages which are being used, so libp2p and revm. And then you can come in and look at some of the developers that are actually this. Okay, yeah, this just looks at developer activity. It doesn't actually filter on whether it's a Rust package or not. So you can see that there's not a huge lot of activity there, but maybe, I don't know, let's see what Python looks like. Okay, so web3.py, Brownie, this is a new project that came in, Viper, Ape Framework, etc. So yeah, you can see those connections over here. The last thing that you can do, which is kind of fun, is you can deep dive on a project and you can see its metrics over time. Let's take our friend who deploys deterministic deployers, Ruben. You like this guy. But you can see all of the different people that are using, who have deployed factories using his CreateX deployer.
Oh.
And you can also see the dev tooling relationships. It'd be cool if we could deep dive and actually identify who these people are. Just because I've been in it, I know some of these people. So for instance, like, this is one of the people on the account abstraction side. There's this person has done a lot of like deep cryptography work. So it's kind of cool seeing them show up in the graph and you can see what they've done over time. Again, pretty basic, but more just a way of capturing who's who and what they might be doing with the dev tool. And then again, the final thing I just want to stress is that all of the work here is on the visualization. This is all of the code that is required in order to run this dashboard. It's minimal. And actually, most of it is just the logic required to cache the queries over here. So super simple. I do kind of hand roll some DeFi Llama stuff here to make it not bring in those duplicate projects. There's a few that have been flagged for various issues, but for the most part, everything is just running off of our models and they're getting cached here. And then we decide whether to refresh or not. So that's that. It's gone out the door. It's working well. Any questions?
Yeah, kind of riffing on one of the things that you said about wishing you could see the people. I feel like our infrastructure is a lot further along than when we last asked that question. I'm
Yeah.
wondering how hard would it be to leverage the API crawler factory that Javi put together, use that to scrape the ENS subgraph, which is centralized, right? That's not on multiple networks. It's just on what's it called, Ethereum.
Yeah.
And then once you have that data set, we can start creating all of these artifacts by user, yada, 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 models that we've always wanted to maintain. We just never had an opportunity to do it. But particularly with that, I think a lot of people, including myself, put their GitHub user on their ENS. So then you can start to tie it back into on-chain activity, which is like a really rich, data set that that could be really cool.
100%. One thing that I'm hearing from people that I speak to is that we've gone so deep into projects that people want us to go a little bit deeper into individuals and developers and stuff like that. So like you said, it's kind of some combination of the GitHub username and then other artifacts that might be linked to a Farcaster address, or the address and then the Farcaster username, etc. So yeah, we have the data now. We could start doing that. There is also another project called Talent Protocol, which is also joined some of these things that we could tap into. I think they have an API. We've had some chats with them.
Yeah,
but
they offered to share data with us.
Yeah.
We just never acted on it. I think, like, zooming out a little bit on all the stuff that we're doing around Limoso, I think it's actually higher likelihood, if you want to expand to a bigger market, even within crypto, there's a higher likelihood that you're going to get more traction on the ability to query on users than you are going to be querying on projects.
right.
If that makes sense. Right, like, and I'm not saying that these are the models that we want to start adding right away, but, like, for example, the type of query that I think could be more mass market than viewing projects would be like, if you had a token flow model and it's like, okay, tell me within the last 2 months, which wallets have been, moving the most money, right?
Right.
Like, that's actually a wider market of queries that people would be interested in than trying to figure out retrofunding projects. Anyway,
Yeah, totally.
I think it's really low lift if we actually had, some kind of way of tagging users. But anyway.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's a lot there. The other benefit is that we have now indexed all of GitHub. So we have a table which Ken has been using to create his bot filtered metric, which literally looks at every username and allows you to filter on, do they look like a bot or not? Right now, it's purely based on the name, I think, but we could also have a version which looks at certain behaviors that might be suspicious and might lead to think it's a bot. Okay, so that's any other questions on the retrofunding stuff?
Yeah, one more question. Aside from the one you demoed, which, shoot, I forget what it was called, World, what was it again? What was the application on World that was?
Oh yeah, World Republic. Yeah, should I find another?
Yeah, World Republic. Aside from World Republic, are there any other net new activity that's been interesting now that it's been a few months? Especially on the developer tool side?
Yeah, so let me just take a look at who's new. So there are, let's see. Actually, some more came in last month. I think right now, Jonas has kind of strategically reached out to projects that he thought should be in the round. So that's why Brownie is in now. You have Revoke Cash, which is also in. Then there's kind of a longer tail of smaller on-chain projects. I think here, this is a pretty good snapshot. DeFi Llama is in right now. They're very happy about it. Ponder is a pretty cool kind of data engineering solution for on-chain projects. ERPC, this is our friend Hemant at Gold Sky.
Oh, yeah.
He's connected with this project. Super excited about it. Very happy. Yeah, I think it's. I would just say there aren't projects that I would expect to be in that haven't already applied, And in general, there's been very little. I think there's a long tail, but the criteria are very good at filtering out spam projects.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a muscle that we grow over time, but there really ought to be effectively a dedicated marketing function here, right? Maybe we just work with Lyra on this directly. But like, you know, especially if there are net new projects that are popping up that we're discovering this way and we're rewarding,
Right.
either on chain or dev tooling, and then like if people have never heard of it before and you give them a highlight, that's like a huge win-win for everybody.
Well, yeah, that's kind of a good segue into some of the next things that I will share. Definitely where Optimism want to go with this, and it shouldn't be a surprise, is funding much more what they call the mid-tail. So you don't need to be a genius to identify Aerodrome and Uniswap as projects that are driving a lot of impact. And basically, all they are doing is taking these funds and giving them out to their users or putting them into their own grants program, which is nice, but it's also, retrofunding. So that's like one core purpose of retrofunding is just to recognize the products that have obviously been hugely impactful. I think what they're also interested in is kind of tightening the feedback loop between what they call a mid-tail builder, so a smaller project that has kind of come on, maybe gotten some initial grants or started as a hackathon, and then they are able to quickly move into getting some meaningful funding from retrofunding. And that could even be a replacement for revenue in like the short term. I would say the best place that we are seeing that now is on WorldChain, where you have projects that are literally coming in, getting going. Like you can see here, there's a lot of new projects that have come on recently. This project, another one that I just learned about. It's a team that left Uniswap, and literally they left 3 months ago. They deployed the app. They already have traction on WorldChain, and they're getting funded. So this is their first revenue. Really cool to see that happening. And I think they are going to be much more strategic now about saying, great, like there's a tier of builders that shouldn't be really competing with the Aerodromes and the Uniswaps, but ideally we can have targeted funding for specific things that goes directly to them, interop adoption, growing users, etc.
Yeah, that's super cool. I don't want to. I completely agree with you, and on top of that, I feel like there is like a marketing opportunity here that's like not being captured.
Fair enough. Yep. All right. Next up, in case you missed it, we now have funding data, which is flowing in OSO, start to finish. This is a tutorial which kind of shows you how to get at it. I will show you the notebook itself, which plays with the data. We also have a bunch of tutorials now that are showing up. And if anyone wants to contribute a tutorial, Evan has a nifty little GitHub action, which will take your tutorial, create a collab version of it, and submit the doc in the tutorial section, which I've used a couple times, works very nicely. Right now, if you kind of look at all of the funding metrics that we have, there are 27. Obviously, funding is actually very useful to look at yearly, biannually, quarterly, et cetera. Those are actually pretty good time increments as opposed to daily, because it's not like most projects are getting daily grants. We have a couple different sources at this point. We have Gitcoin. That's a big one, both the donations and the matching that come in. We also have OSS funding, which I will show in a minute. That's basically CSV data, which is getting indexed. And then finally, we have Open Collective. Right now, we actually haven't joined any projects on the Open Collective data set, so we don't get any metrics back, but there is a huge amount of data there. So a good issue for someone, if not me, is to actually start creating those Open Collective artifacts for projects that we already have an open source observer, and we can get both the deposits and the expenses for those projects as well. And there's a little detail here, so kind of a gotcha, but these ones are called funding received versus funding awarded. The reason this is a gotcha is because Open Collective is actually tracking a bank transfer. There's like a Stripe or whatever the interface is for someone to donate or fund a project, and it's going to their account. Whereas our CSV data, for OSS funding, it's like an announcement, but in some cases those grants are clawed back or they're not actually distributed, and we wouldn't know that. And so this is basically an award versus actually being able to prove that the money has been received by the recipient. We could do something similar for Gitcoin donations, I think. Like certainly the donations here would be a received, and the matching, that's actually awarded, because sometimes projects don't claim it. And we don't have a way of actually tracing right now if the project received the exact funding that is kind of announced. So a few issues there, but in general, we have all this data now. If you want to get a sense for how much funding is in here, it's pretty massive. In total, from OSS funding, we now have about $360 million of funding captured. If you add the Gitcoin stuff, it's another 30 or so million, which can be traced to a project. There's more if you don't care about the projects. This is using the key metrics model. Yeah, so this is just funding that we can identify to a project in OSO. Again, there's more. We can look up how much more, but it's pretty significant. I guess we're probably at like, I don't know, 400 million. If you throw in the Open Collective, we might be at $500 million captured. That's a good soundbite. And then here's a few examples if you want to go deeper and kind of look at, which projects have received the most Gitcoin donations over time. If you want to go like very deep and understanding who is funding a particular Gitcoin project, like I noticed that Revoke Cash was very high up on this list of projects in terms of how much funding they received. So what is that? Do they have a large community, or they actually got like this massive donation from one person back in 2023? So you can see that, which is cool. And then again, here's a snapshot of all the different funding sources that we have right now. So Optimism, Arbitrum, Stellar, Octant, and then a few other smaller sources right now. This is coming in through the CSV data. And then one thing that we need to do is actually kind of update the Sankey chart, which shows here's all the projects that are getting funded, and here's who is funding who, and here's how that has changed over time. That'd be a really nice marquee data visualization that we can show. Thanks, Ikro. Oh, last thing was to show some cool sheet stuff. Do you have 2 minutes, or do you have to go right now?
Yeah, sure.
All right, great. We'll take any questions on this in a minute. So last thing I will share is an example of using the Google Sheets connector that Ikro demoed earlier. So this link will take you to the docs, which Ikro showed. But what's feeding this is this tab here. So we basically took all of the governance grants that Optimism has given over the past 3 years. It goes back to season 1, 2022. I kind of vibe coded a semantic agent, which will go in and identify, it will scrape the data from the proposal and identify which is the most likely OSO project. It worked pretty well. I had to fix a few that were like impossible to know without more context. But we're at a point where we have basically 95% of all funding that Optimism has given mapped to an OSO project. I wasn't expecting to get this high. Really excited about that. And 75% of the projects, the applications are mapped to project. And this, like, some of these things include like audits and in real life events. So I don't think we'll ever get to 100%. We don't need to, but it's like a pretty high percentage.
That's super
and
cool.
Here is the query. Again, I'm just proud to show how simple it is. So we have the OSO G sheets, as Ikro showed. I call this one Gov Grants. You can come in. There's a bit of like cleanup magic, and then it grabs the metrics. There's some manipulation here to kind of summarize everything, but it's not a lot of code. And most of it is really just to go from having like daily or monthly metrics to something which is meaningful at a rolled up basis. If you look at what you see here, this is basically ingesting the spreadsheet data. So you can get the link. I can say, okay, here is this project. Oh, actually, let's go to grant season 4. I think, or grant season 5. I think this is when we got a grant. So we can take a look at ourselves, hopefully, once this runs. It pulls both on-chain metrics and then a handful of dev tooling metrics. Let me see if OSO is in here. Maybe we were in a different one. I forget which one we were in. Maybe it was season 4. Or missions, that might have been us. Oh, well, we're in here somewhere, but you can basically look at the grant size. You can get the link over here, and then you can see right now it's just a 6-month look back period. We'll have it obviously extend for like a year into the future as well. But how do these grants do in terms of fees, transactions? We also have developer metrics, active developers, commits, forks, contributors, whatever you want, we can throw those in here. And the cool thing is you can also roll these up and say, okay, here's the total amount of TVL that was rewarded, and here's the amount of OP that was allocated per unit of impact. This is like the big thing that Optimism wants to get better at understanding. And so we can do that for any collection. We can also compare that to retro funding, and we can start seeing how well these programs compare to each other. This is very topical right now, just to show. So people are asking for budget. They are grading their own homework. And the numbers don't match what we're seeing. So I think this is going to be an important check on some of the results that are being claimed by different grant programs. But all of it is powered by spreadsheets. Or at least the key first step is powered by a spreadsheet. The rest is not.
When they don't match up here and they're doing their own due diligence, is there a link to how they got their number?
It depends. I have to dig a bit more into the source. This is something I just saw when I was on the call before at the beginning of demo day. But yeah, they definitely want people to now be showing receipts, and I think the receipts will ideally point back to something like this.
Awesome.
They continue to reference Evan's analysis, even though it's inconvenient. They believe it's correct.
That's awesome.
All right, thanks for staying long. Ikro, free to jump if you have to. Any other questions?
Evan still wanted to show a few things. We're like super long now.
I mean, I'm still here, so
How much time do you think you need, Evan?
I can do it quick. I can go really quick.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, let me go fast.
For what it's worth, this is a great sign. I mean, I love all the stuff that we're doing on all sides, and it's such like good food for thought and fodder. I'm wondering if there's like ways to break this up so that like the things that we want to show to other people, we prioritize a list of that. The things that we just want to have like as discussion internally or like as a longer form discussion group, not internally. I mean, obviously it's still public and open to other people, but more like, yeah, like planning kind of discussions. Like if we break those into different calls, I don't know, but a lot of cool stuff this demo day.
Cool. Can you guys see my screen? Cool. Okay. So I just kind of have 3 quick things to go high level over. The first thing, like Carl mentioned, is this new tutorials workflow, but I just wanted to I can't show an example because it'll run CI and take a little bit of time, but just to kind of, so everyone knows how it works. So the first aspect is now in our Insights tutorials folder, we have CI. And it will, whenever you make a PR before you can push anything, it will basically run through these checks. So it'll make sure that it's a valid notebook. It will, make sure that everything's formatted via Prettier, and then it will actually run through each cell and make sure that everything runs. And so, yeah, your notebook has to be fully executable before you can actually merge it into the Insights repo. Once that is done, you can then, I made 2 quick actions that you can call based on that notebook. So the first one is you make a Colab notebook. What this will do, it'll make a Colab notebook. It will add a little link in the top of your notebook that says like right here, open in Colab with that link. And it will put this Colab notebook in there's like a data science folder or tutorials folder in the Colab community. And it'll automatically put it in there, share it and everything. So if you just run this with the link to like what the notebook is that you want to run it on, and that'll immediately put it in. And then the second thing, separate command. This is if you want to move something over to the docs. If you run this, it will create a that MDX file. It will then update the index so that, because like we have an index that lists like a bulleted list of, you know, each tutorial and a little one sentence about what it goes over. It'll call Gemini and have it write a little matching one sentence that matches the tone and pick an emoji that like doesn't already exist, since I know we have emojis. And then it will create a PR for that. So it still will have to pass OSO CI. I imagine it would if we're at this point, because, you know, everything's executable and passes prettier. But that makes it so that if you want to make a tutorial with just 2 commands, you can like get it in the Colab community and get it in the docs. And then this is like little notes about sidebar. Yeah, Carl.
I guess more of a feature request or something that we should do is also be able to scan the directory, open every file, and make sure that it's still executable. So for instance, if we change the name of a table or something, we don't want to break the tutorials, and then ideally we can get a list of things that need to be updated.
That makes sense. Yeah, I can do that. Another thing I thought of too was all this does is it just converts it into like a Colab notebook or into an index, but we still require whoever made the tutorial to like write markdown and write comments. But something that like me and Carl have talked about before is maybe using like an LLM, and maybe we could add summaries and add little things in it where you really could just write like just make the cells and then it'll fill that all in. But yeah, anyway, that's tutorials. The next thing, pretty quick, but I just for Optimism for season 7, we were doing some analysis on the TVL of the grants that they give out, the projects. So this is like the first thing that we made. Just some cool charts that show daily TVL. Yeah, I just think they're cool to look at. This was the thing that they recently asked for. So on the left, it's the top 5 projects ranked based on this, and then the top 5 projects ranked based on the Grants Council. And they want a way to compare to see how well the TVL is of each side by side. And so here you can see that Rocket Pool is the only one we don't have data on, but everyone else we have that, and you can directly compare. Oh, and this one too. And then finally, they just wanted a little table with all of this metadata, and so nothing really that interesting there. Cool. Okay, last thing. So evals. I have reworked the eval system a little bit so that everything is code-based now. The previous spreadsheet that we had is deprecated. So if you want to add to evals, adjust to the evals, change anything, all of that is just directly in this repo. I made a little README here that talks about like making new evals, where to put questions, if you want to change any schemas, how to make sure if stuff still works. So you can refer to this, but just to show you a quick TLDR of what I've done. The first thing is in agent types in this datasets.py, we specify the types of questions. And so here's like an example. You just go in, you throw a basic Pydantic class with some metadata. And then here I made a backlog question. So we have a text-to-SQL database with all the text-to-SQL questions. And then there's a lot of questions because we don't know all of the agents that we'll be using. And so for any questions that like Carl gets that we just want to maintain and store, but we don't know where it'll go yet, you can throw that into like a question backlog. And so here you can just make like a backlog question. This is the function do that. And that will go into this file. And so you, based on the schemas defined in this datasets.py, you can then go over into the datasets folder and just create one file for each one where you're just pretty much building it. And so like here's the question backlog. Carl, you'll probably recognize these. These are a lot of questions that you sent to me that you got that I haven't actually wired up yet. I've like thrown notes on here, and I do have a flag to indicate if it's true, if it was a real user question, which I think is pretty important. But yeah, these are just all those there. And so we can keep adding to those down the line. If you ever like have anything, or if anyone has any questions that they want to add to store to eventually be turned into an eval, you can just pretty easily throw it on here and add any notes or metadata that could be useful in terms of categorizing down the line. And then the last thing is I changed the text to SQL to, I mentioned this a little bit and Ruben showed it a little bit too, but we just improved the categorization. So when you make the example, all you put in is the stuff that we can't really extrapolate with an LLM consistently. So that's like priority, difficulty, and the categories. And then obviously the query. But everything else, which Ruben was showing, yeah, is in here. Things like query type, which query type is basically, does it have any of these things? And if it does, which of these things does it have? Joins, filters, aggregations, and group bys. And then the other thing is like what actual OSO models does it use? So we set this up so that when you create your text and SQL questions, it will automatically run through this, so it's more deterministic. And then when we run our evals and we check the answers that the agent spits out, we run it through both of these too. And so even though, like Ray was mentioning earlier, at the bottom line, the most important thing is the result. This stuff is still really important because if it's not even getting, like, we want to understand what tables it's looking at. We want to understand the query type. And then down the line, once we are thinking about things like fine tuning, you know, and we're in a good place with the agent and we want to just improve it, we can use stuff like this type of metadata to help, you know, push the agent into creating, like, you know, queries that better align with what we're looking for. And yeah, I mean, this is just pretty simple, but like I just run it through each and then we do a basic Jacards over the query types and over the models used. But that's pretty much it. I know I was going kind of fast, but does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, this is awesome.
Cool.
Thank you guys for bearing with us. It's been like an hour and a half, which is a lot.
This is the longest we've ever gone, I think.
This is the longest we've ever gone, but like I was engaged this whole time. I feel like
Yeah. No, this is
like,
also we
so cool.
high value sprint.
Yep.
So this is great.
Yeah, I have a million ideas of what we want to do in the next 2 weeks, but maybe let's table some time to discuss that later today after lunch. But yeah, thank you so much. This was so cool. This was like one of our best demo days yet. So we'll catch up later. Thanks everyone.
Cool.
That's out. Bye.
Later.